Hello, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. Today, we are going to talk about Flow and how to use the background services in your app. First of all, what are background services? So, background services are basically services that you want to run them on the background when the app is running. So that could be like any sort of background services. Most of the time, like 99% of the time, it will be like a location service. So which means that you want to actually take the location of the current user that is using your app for tracking purposes. You can do that. Or in my particular case right now in this video, I am actually going to use the background services to monitor the calls that were made using the phone. So this app is requested by a company which they want to monitoring the company calls that are made to the clients. So keep in mind this is only for education purposes. Please don't do any harmful things with this code and this app. So, without further ado, let me explain you what are the background services like in general. Um, in this particular case, we're going to use background services and we can use a particular amount of time. So for example, 1 minute, it could be 1 minute, 1 hour, one day, 24 hours, for example, or whatever you want to. In my particular case, I'm going to use it for 1 minute just for testing, debugging purposes, but later I'm going to change it for 10 minutes. And like I said, in my particular case, I'm going to use the phone book of the phone lock of the phone, and I'm going to use Android. So this video will only be only the code that I'm going to introduce you will be only for Android, but you can use ChatGPT or your own skills to actually add the code for iOS as well. The package that I'm going to use is both for Android and iOS, but because I'm going to use it only for Android and I have only Android and I cannot test it for iOS. So please forgive me for giving you code only for Android, but that's the reason why. And like I said, if you manage it to make it work for iOS, I'll be more than happy if you share the code to share it in the GitHub so we can have it for iOS as well, and if someone actually tests it and it's working, of course. Okay, so let me walk through now how I set up this app. Um, so first of all, I created a brand new project. My project is currently called Phone Logs, and it is only one page. You don't need Firebase. I haven't set it up Firebase at all. You don't need Firebase. It's only one page and I have two buttons. So the two buttons that I have is the first button is only for debugging purposes and it says get phone lock. And when you click it, it is actually going to get your first phone call that you made that you made on your Android device. So I was actually surprised. This is a good hint. I was actually surprised that the first phone call that I made from my phone is actually from 2019. And that is almost 4 years ago. And I think it's not almost, but it is 4 years ago from the time of this recording of the video, which amazed me actually because if you go to your lock phone call logs in your own phone. The logs that I have are within maybe 2 or 3 months, but not more. And this is 4 years ago. I would say it again, 4 years ago. That's amazing. It's like I don't know. I was surprised when I saw that. But the first phone call that I was outputted from this code was from 2017 and now it's 2025. 23 currently of the recording of this video. So, like I said, this will give you your first phone call, and we will get a couple of things. So, first of all, we'll get the type of the phone call, which can be three types. So, it could be missed phone call, which means that someone called you and you haven't picked up the phone. And it could be also outgoing phone call, which is phone calls that you made. It could be incoming phone calls, are the phone calls that uh, that were someone called you actually. So you have, I think there are three types. I don't think there are more than three types. I think there are only three types, and you actually get that here. You get if it's a missing, outgoing, or incoming. And then the actual number, it depends how you store it. So if you're making an outgoing call, it will be stored the way that you store it. So in my case, I'm actually storing it with the country code. So it's plus for Bulgaria, it's plus 359. But if you store it like with 0889, for example, or something like that, without a country phone call, it will actually be displayed like that here. If you make the call. If someone is calling you, I think all the phone calls that someone is calling you are going to be showed with the country code as well. So keep that in mind because this will be how the data set will be structured. Great. And then we have the duration. The duration is actually the duration in seconds. So if you talk for 33 seconds, then it will be 33. If you have a missing phone call or you called someone and they didn't pick up, the duration will be 0. So keep that in mind as well. This is how the data will be structured. And finally, the timestamp. The timestamp are actually structured like the year, and then we have the month, and then we have uh, the day, and then we have the time, and then we have the minutes. And I think the time and the minutes are based on your phone call, or sorry, your phone. Uh, so this would be the the format of the structure. So let me actually show you like a phone call that I have recently made, and let me show you how this format looks like. Let me switch to the notepad. So, like I said, the year, the month, the date, the hour, and 24 hours, and then the minutes. This is how this will be structured. Great. Uh, and then the second button over here is actually the one that it's starting the service. So there are two ways to start the service. The background service is what I'm trying to say. So there are two ways of starting the background service. The first way is starting manually. When you start the application, click on this button to start a background service. And this is actually the preferable way, if you ask me, because for two reasons, actually. The first reason is that in order to start the background action, the user have to gain permissions to your phone calls and to your contacts as well. So there are two permissions that the user have to gain in order to run the background services or the background actions or the custom code in general. And if you automatically run it on the main, for example, the main Dart, it will actually not start the actions. So and the code will actually fail. And that's why I did it. First of all, first I did it on the main.dart file, but then I decided it's actually better to do it in like in a button. And then you press the button, and the action will start, and then you can safely close the app. And this is the action, but we'll get into more details after that. So let's talk about let's talk about the packages that I used right now. So let's go through the packages now. Okay, so let's go through the packages. I'm currently, as you probably can see, I'm currently using 4 packages right now, which is Flow background service package, Coloc package, permission handler package, and Flutter local notifications package. So, and I'm using for the versions, I'm actually using any. If you haven't watched my video, I talked about any over to my video, which is actually this one. So if you haven't watched this video, make sure you watch it to understand more about the any and how you can use it and what is the benefits actually to use any. Instead of the version of the package. And then let me actually open this background services. So this is the package that I'm going to use. Probably when you see the video, the version will be another one. But if you're using any, it doesn't really matter the version. But the whole idea is that you can actually see that this package is made to work for Android and iOS. So like I said, I only made my custom code to work with Android, but you can easily do it to work with iOS as well. And the whole idea of this Flutter background service is to actually run a piece of your code, run it on the background. So even the application is closed, it will actually continue running on the background. This is what this package is actually doing. And let me go to the second package that I'm using, which is coloc. So if you write coloc, you can actually see the package, the version. The current version, like I said, is 4.0. But if you use any, you don't need to specify the version. And then this is actually the use of this package is only to get access to your phone calls, and this is only used in Android. So make sure that the package that you want to use for iOS includes iOS as well, because this one only includes Android, so it could be only used for Android. And then let's continue. The third package that I'm going to use, it's this one, permission handler. So if you click over here, you can actually see the permission handler. And the permission handler, it's used in the Android, iOS, and Windows. And we are using it to actually request permissions for our for the phone lock, for example. Why we are not using the custom the UI permissions in Flow, we are not, because we cannot. If we actually go in the settings and if we click on permissions, now that is actually a good way to explain you the permissions. And we are actually using 3 permissions right now. The first one is read call log, which is reading your phone calls. The second one is foreground services, which is allowing your applications to run background services or foreground services in this case. And the last one is scheduled exact alarm. And those are actually used to, in order to use the background services, you have to use foreground services as well. And I will explain you why. But you can probably see that I don't use any of the default permissions in Flow. I'm using custom ones. And if I go over here, and if I have a button, let's say that I want to click this text right now. And when I click it, I want to request a permission. So if I write permission, in the search bar, and I can spell it, but here it is. So request permissions, and you can actually you probably don't know it and don't see it, but I'm actually clicking on the unset, and I cannot select my custom permission. So this is like, I don't know if it's intended or it's a bug in Flow, but you cannot access your custom permissions this way. So you have to actually uh, ask for permissions for the user using a custom code, and that's why we're using this package. And the final package that we're going to use is called Flutter Loco Handler. Sorry, it's not the handler, it's Flutter Local Notifications, of course. And this is the one that we're going to use. And as you can see, it's available for Android iOS, Linux, and Mac OS. And we're using that because in order to use background notifications, we need to use a local notifications. And the local notifications are only local. They're not push notifications. Don't mix up them with a push notification. Those are not push notifications. Those are local notifications. And the reason for that we need local notifications is because when we're using a background services, uh, we need to notify the user that background services are being executed by our application. And in order to show that to the user, we are going to use local notifications. And the local notifications, it looks like a normal notification. I will show you later how it looks like on my actual phone, but it looks like a normal notification. And the whole idea, like I said, is the user to actually know that there is the application is currently running. There is some services that are currently running, and you cannot actually dismiss this notification. You can probably hide the notification, but you cannot dismiss it. And the only way to dismiss the notification is to actually stop the background service or to force close the application or to remove the application in general. So those are the four packages that we are going to use. And now let's talk about the code itself. Okay, so let me walk you through the code right now so you can actually see and actually explain you what this code does. And if you want to implement for iOS, it will probably be better to know what this code is doing. Great. So let's start with the first line. So the first line that I'm going to use, that I'm using, is the API calls. Why I'm using the API calls? Because in my particular case, I want to actually send API calls to my backend, and that's why I'm using it. And how I'm going to do that? I'm going to do that by simply making like send phone calls. I'll create a new backend called send phone calls, and let's say the URL it's HTTPS, and then maybe example.com. Sorry, example.com. Great. And then let's say that this will be a GET request, and let's save it. And when I go to my code, I can actually say when this button is clicked, execute my API code. And I'm doing that because I want to check what is the actual code that's being executed. And before I actually do that, let me quickly show you if I want to pass some parameters, or if I want to pass. Let's make it a post so I can actually pass some parameters. And let's make it a JSON, for example, and then I want to pass. Let's say I want to pass the phone calls, and then the phone calls that I'm going to pass. Let's say that they are list of strings. So let's say that I'm going to pass them as phone calls, and or let's say calls. I want to have different names actually, and this would be a string, and this would be a true because this would be a list of strings. And here I'm going to pass it like that. And then I click format, and if I click format and everything is fine, I don't get any errors, that's fine. Let's save it right now. Let's go back to my code over here, and then I am actually going to get the code. And of course, I'm getting errors because I need to pass. I need to say which API call I'm going to use, and I need to pass some data. So the data that I'm going to pass right now, I'm going to put a random data. I just want to see this will be a list of strings, random list of strings, and I just want to another error should be gone. It is, and then let's go over here, and then let's actually show you what the code looks like. So the code that we are going to pass is this one, and now it looks a lot, but it's actually not. And if we go back, now we can delete this API code because we already saw the code. We copy the code. We don't need this anymore. We go back over here, and then in order to pass this as an API call, I'm actually uh, going to call this API over here, and the list that I'm going to pass, because it's a list of strings, the list that I'm going to pass is this phone call set, and I should be able to pass it like that. So I should be able to pass it like that. So it's send phone calls, call, and that call. And then this is the name of the parameter. It's calls list. And the list that I'm going to send is phone call set. But I'm actually command this line over here right now because I haven't set it up yet, so I don't need it. But I'm just wanted to show you that if you want to send this list, because probably you want to send it somewhere, if you want to send this list through an API call like I'm doing it, you can do it this way. Or if you want to send it or save it uh, in your backend, and if you're using Fire Store, there is actually a good video about that, how you can bunch import documents. And let me just so this is the video. I have a bunch of videos, but those two are actually the ones that you need. It's this one, it's bunch insert documents, and this one is bunch update or insert document. So if you want to insert it in for the flow, this is how uh, I explain it how you can do it with a custom code. But like I said, I'm going to use API code. If you don't use API code, you can actually command this one, and then you can remove the exclude from compilation because you don't need it. We are only excluding from compilation because of this line of code, because line of code on number 10 or line 10. And then those three imports are the imports of the packages itself. And then the first piece of code that we have is actually the main action. And the main action, what is doing? The main action is actually ensure to instantiate the background service, and then we are actually requesting the phone permission. So if we go all the way to the bottom, this is the piece of code that we're using to request the phone permissions, and we're actually testing the status if we have permissions to the phone call, and if we the phone log, sorry, and if we have permission to it, then if we don't have permission to it, we're actually asking the user to have permissions, and we can actually implement a logic to show a message to the user or something like that why we need these permissions. But I'm not actually doing that. The permissions are only shown to the user, and the user have to grab them. But like I said, you can implement your logic over here. Great. And then let's continue. The second thing that we do is initiating the service, and then this is the method that is doing that. Now, like I said, I'm using only Android. So I'm using a logic from Flutter This is a source code of Flutter and I'm checking if it's Android. So if it's Android, then do the logic over here. If it's iOS, then you don't do anything. So the code is not executed at all. Great. And then the first line is actually creating a channel. What is this channel? This channel is about the Android foreground notifications. Like I said earlier, it will be used to show the user that you have a running instance or a running services in your app in the notifications bar of the user phone. You need to have this, like I said, in order to run background services. If you don't have that, the background services will not use, and you get an error. So this is the channel ID. The channel ID is you can do it any channel that you want, but keep in mind that when you do it on line 29, you have to do the same thing in line 58 as well. So those channels IDs needs to be the same. So you can put any ID you want to, but they just need to be the same. Okay, great. And then we have your notification channel title. This can be anything that you want as well. So if you are requesting, like I'm doing the phone call logs, it could be something like phone call logs, notifications, or something like that. And then we have the actual notifications plugin. And then here we are initiating the plugin. The app icon needs to be added as a drawable resource. So what that means is that we are actually having an icon that we are having next to the notification. So the notification has its own icon. And in my case over here, I'm using a leaf-like icon for my notification in the top bar where is the phone. Where is the clock actually. Great. And then we start the foreground background. Flutter background service, which are the background service or the background actions that we're going to execute. And then here are the configurations that we are using. So first of all, we have the iOS notification configuration, iOS configurations, which are empty in my case because I don't use any iOS here. That's why it's empty. And then I have the Android one. The Android one is, I'm saying on start run this, and the run this method, and the method that is going to use to run is this one. And then we have the auto start, we say true. Is foreground mode, we say true. And then we have the add necessary notification details. So we have the notification channel ID. Like I said, it should be the same as line 29. And then we have the init notification title. And here you can actually say running, running and checking for phone contacts or something like that, because I haven't changed that because your use case could be different, and that's why I haven't changed it. And this is the same for the details. So this is notification content. So this is the title of the notification, the foreground notification, and this is the actual content of the notification. Great. And then on start, when we start this, we have while. And while this is running, so we are going to run it like a loop. We're going to loop it, and we're going to loop it for every minute. So every minute we're going to run the read phone log. So the read phone log is actually the code that we want to run every minute. This could be something else. So this part over here, you can change it, and you can run it for, let's say, for the user location, or wherever you want. So wherever you want to be run on the background every minute, or you can change it. Like you can change it. It says minute, but you can change it for every 10 minutes, or you can change it for hours. You can change it for days. It's up to you, whatever you want to. And then here, this code over here, this part of the code over here is actually for me to run only the background service if uh, the time is between 8 a.m. in the morning and 7 p.m. And 7 p.m. in the afternoon. And the reason for that, like I said, is because I'm using this for business purposes, and I don't want this to be run the whole night. I don't want this to be run after 7 p.m. because after 7 p.m. there will be no new phone calls that are going to be made, and I don't want to the phone to drown the battery of the phone and just run it every minute uh, during the night. It makes no sense for me, at least. And then I will actually increase that to 10 minutes for my productions. But when I'm debugging it, I made it for 1 minute, so I should not wait every 10 minutes to get the response of my code. Great. So this is what it's doing on start. And then the final thing, it's what is actually doing on start. Like I said, on my particular case, I'm getting the code log of the phone, which is in the type of entries, and we have the type of entries, and we have the code type. And the code type is actually I'm getting the values, and then I'm converting actually the time to a date, and then I'm converting this time to a timestamp. So this is the format that I'm getting, and of course you can change it to any format that you like, but this is the format that I'm going to get it. Like I don't need the seconds, for example, but if you want to get the seconds, I think you can as well. And then I have the phone log, so I'm converting this I'm converting the type, the number, the duration, and the timestamp into a single string, and then I'm checking because I have this phone log set, and I'm actually checking and I'm putting if there is a new phone call made, I'm putting it into the phone log set because my idea is that I'm actually going to send the phone log set to my API call, and I can do it actually over here. I can do it actually over here, and I will actually send this. So there are two ways. You can send every individual phone call as a string, or you can actually do it and send it all the list to the phone call. The way that I did it over here is that I'm going to check if there is a new phone call, because the whole idea is that if you have like 100, let's say that I have 100 phone calls on my phone, every single minute in this case in my code, it will actually go through and get all my 1,000 phone calls and then do something with them. But this is not what I want. I actually want to get the list of phone calls and then to check if I have already added those phone calls. That means I don't have new phone calls. And if I make a new phone call, it will actually get inside this if, and I will actually send this phone call to my backend. So this is how it works. This is the code. And if you have any questions, let me know. The code will be available in the description. And yeah, I think that's it. Let me actually try and show you a working demo of the product. And before I show you actually the demo, let me show you two things. So the first thing that I wanted to show you is that we can now have access to the main.dart file, and we can assign or we can initiate actions. And the action that I just told you about is actually without any arguments. And that's a rule that you only the only actions with no arguments can be included here. And that action is actually without any arguments. And that's why you can actually include it. So I will actually advise you to, if you want to include it, if you want this action to run immediately when the app is started, then you can put it over here. And the action that you have to put is this one, main action, which is this one we just talked about. And like I said, I will actually not advise you to do it this way because of the permissions, because the user have to gain permissions. If you don't have permissions, it will actually not work. Even if you run it like that, it will not work. So I will actually do it. Uh, I will actually click on this button, and then I will have an app state, which is, let me show you the app state. So I have this app state, which is service running, and it's a Boolean, and I will have it as persistent. Because if you close the app, I need to still know if the service is running or not. And I actually did it because I want to be able to stop the service, but right now the service can only be stopped um, using, like I said, to close, to force stop the application or to delete the application. Those are the two ways you can stop the background service right now. Unfortunately, I'm trying to find a way to stop it on using a button, but still I cannot. I cannot actually, for some reason, the app state, the FF app state, it's not the change of the state of the app state is not accessible for me. So if I actually find a way to do it, I'll update the code in my GitHub. But for now, what I'm doing is I'm checking if the service is running, and if it's the service is running, I'm simply going to change it to false. And if it's not running, I'm going to change to true. And based on that, I'm going to change the text as well. So the text is I have if else, and I have if it is running, then the text is stop background service. And if it's not running, I have the text start background service. And the final thing that I have is actually run the main action. So this is the same action, the same code that we talked about, and this is the final action that I'm running. So, and I have this other action, which is read phone log. This was only for debugging purposes, and it's actually the same code. If I open this action, you can actually see it. It's the same action. It's this one. I don't know why. Yeah, it's this one. It's actually the same action in the main action. And it's just updating the app state with the type of the code, the number of the code, the duration of the code, and the time stamp of the code. And when I press it, it is actually showing, like I said, it is showing here, this coming from app state, and it's showing the first phone call that you made from your phone. And to test this app, you cannot test it in run mode and test mode, unfortunately, or web deployment. You cannot do it because you need access to your phone call. And the only way to test it, you have to download the APK, or you have to download the code and then run it in Android Studio and connect your phone with that. So let me actually now show you the working demo of it. So you're currently looking at my phone. I don't know why it looks a little bit weird, but this is a portion of my phone where you see the two buttons. And when I click the first button, you can actually see the phone call. I hide the actual phone number, of course. And then you briefly actually see the notification, and you can see that the service is now start. I can stop it and start it, and you can see the actual notification. I just want to say that the paid membership for YouTube is now open, so you can be a paid member to my YouTube channel, which means a lot. And thank you very much for all the people who are right now paid members to the channel.